You're basically chunking in shapes of lights and darks. It's best to start with your darkest values. So you look for the shapes of the darkest values in the entire area that you're going to be painting. So right now I'm looking for the darkest values on this horn. Looking at that shape. And I can use different size brushes to do this. And it's straight up oil paint. It's not mixed with anything else, it's just the oil paint. You don't need to dilute it at all. And I can mix up another little bit lighter value and chunk in those areas next to the darkest areas. And so I'm looking for those values. I'm just kind of chunking those in. So it's all about looking for shapes. This is going to be a completely black and white oil painting. So I'm only using the different values that I can create with black and white. So I started to lay in some white as well. Now I have a little bit of extra paint on, so I'm going to just rub that into the background because eventually I'm going to paint values throughout the entire thing. Then you're going to take a clean dry brush and you're using that to blend. So with this brush, I keep wiping it off, and every once in a while I will take and clean it completely. So if you're using regular oil paints, you'd be using some type of solvent to clean your brush. If you're using water-soluble oil paints, you're just using water. But make sure that when you do clean your brush, that you completely get the water off of it, because you do not want to mix water into the oil paint because then it would make it runny. So you need to be using a dry brush. Every time you want to blend a little bit more, you have to wipe your brush off. So you use a piece of paper towel to wipe your brush off before you go in and blend more. It's important to constantly be wiping your brush, because if you don't, everything will turn into gray. So on this candle, I laid down the white. Now I'm blending it with a clean brush. After a little bit, I have to wipe that brush off. If I don't, it would all turn into gray. So oil painting, you're going back and forth, I'm looking for the values. Now if I need to, for this one little area, it's really thin, I might add a little bit of the thinner, or if you're using water-based, water-soluble oil paints, you'll use some water. But you don't want to use very much. It doesn't take much to just thin out an area, and there's not going to be too many times when you need to do that. Mostly you're using the paint straight away, and you're just mixing it with a clean dry brush. So all this is chunking in shapes of lights and darks and looking for the values. So I'm looking for the values that I see and I'm comparing them. You can see that I'm doing this from a reference photo of my still life that I'm painting. Sometimes it's a little bit easier if you can paint from the actual still life, because you don't lose all those little shapes like you do in a photograph. But if you need to use a photograph, you can. Remember, anytime you're changing the value, you need to wipe the brush off. After the oil paint's completely dry, you can do more layers, but you want to really get as much blending done in the first layer as possible. They do take quite a bit of time to completely dry, so sometimes you have a little bit of time to still blend, sometimes even a few days where you can still come in and add more into it and blend. That's the benefit to using oil over acrylic. I'm laying in, and then when I want to blend, I just again use a clean dry brush. Clean the brush, you want to wipe it off as much as you can with a paper towel and keep going back and forth until your brush is completely clean. Then you can wash it with soap and water.